Hey guys, Blue here from the YouTube channel Moving Brick Animations. Today I'm going to teach you how to play my new trading card game BRICKFIGHT. BRICKFIGHT is a card game for 2 to 4 players and is recommended for people ages 12 and up and takes roughly 30 minutes to play. This video gives an in-depth look into the rules of the game. I'm having my friend Jawline come over and also explain some of the rules. Now without further ado, let's begin with the game. To play BRICKFIGHT, all you need is a 50 to 75 card deck of BRICKFIGHT cards, some damage counters like those from other TCGs, turn markers, and some dice, preferably 3. Damage counters and turn markers can be printed using the link in the description. Some cards require you to flip a coin, but this can be easily interpreted with dice. Rolling an even number is heads, and rolling an odd number is tails. You also might want to get some sleeves for your cards, as some cards in the game require you to take cards from your opponent, and it can be sometimes tricky to tell whose cards are whose. Of course, this is completely optional. Now before we get into any gameplay, we must first get to know the playing field. Each player has a playing field that looks sort of like this. Each of the different zones have different uses. When a zone is occupied, nothing else can be in it. First is the active zone. Each player has 2 active zones, and characters can be played here. They can only attack and be attacked here as well. Next is the wait spot. Similar to the active zone, characters can be played onto the wait spot. However, unlike the active zone, characters can't attack or be attacked here. Certain cards can change the amount of wait spots a player has, with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 5. When you increase wait spots, the new wait spots are to the left or right of the original wait spot. Next up is the middle zone. The middle zone is an obscure yet special kind of zone that only a very small minority of cards can affect. I didn't actually make many cards that affect the zone, but I will add many more in the future, so you could technically ignore it for now, but it is pretty important. Lastly, let's take a look at the death zone. When a character is defeated, it goes into one of the death zone's 4 slots. If your death zone is full at any time, you'll lose the game. Now I know that there are 3 more zones that are on the field, but all 3 of these are pretty much self-explanatory. The deck goes into the deck zone, arenas are played in the arena zone, and when cards are discarded, they are put into the discard pile.
Finally, some action.
Alright, so at the beginning of the game, take your deck, shake hands with your opponent, shuffle your deck, very obvious stuff, and then draw 7 cards. This will be your hand for the rest of the game, and you are not allowed to show it to anybody because it's your hand and it should be secret. Then after that, you flip a coin, call it heads. That's heads. You decide, and then they decide who goes first. I will go first. Okay, let's go. A turn consists of 3 phases: the draw phase, main phase, and check phase. They're each performed in that order. During the draw phase, you simply draw a card from your deck. Each player skips this phase on their first turn. If you have no characters in play, draw 2 cards instead of 1. This rule can only be applied during your first 3 turns. Furthermore, if you have no characters in any of your active zones after your first 3 turns, discard the top 3 cards of your deck before drawing. Then proceed directly to the main phase. In the main phase, you have a limit of 4 actions. Once you run out of actions, you must immediately proceed to the check phase. Within those 4 actions, you may do the following in any order and as many times as you like. Draw a card. Play characters onto the wait spot or active spots. Play or attach items, attacks, arenas, or abilities. Use attacks, items, abilities, or arenas. Discard attacks, items, abilities, or arenas. Switch an active character with a waiting character, which is a character in the wait spot. This can be done even if there are no characters in the wait spot. Target a character. Targeting will be explained later. Shift a character into a form or ultima, which will both be explained later. Doing each of these costs 1 action. So now it's my turn. I skip my draw phase since it's my first turn. And I can play characters, attach cards, or use attacks. But since I don't have any more characters in play right now, I'll just play Brick onto the wait spot. But now that I've played Brick, I can use his innate ability Metamorph. When characters are played and their innate ability activates when they're played, using that innate ability counts as the same action. take speed whip form brick as well. And then I'll shift brick it to speed whip form by placing a form over the character. And I'll use boat ride as well. And then I'll play, that's 2 already, so I'll play brick hit onto one of my active zones. Brought the bricks. It works the first time, so. And then, the last act I'm just gonna play Mertail. I just gotta get a full army in. You may also choose to end your main phase early. After the main phase comes the check phase. During the check phase, check your entire playing field for any cards that have effects which take place during the check phase, as well as any ultimate characters in play for the ultimate timer, which will be explained soon. Then perform those effects and place turn markers accordingly. Finally, please note that only cards that are on your side of the playing field are applied during the check phase. Now we will take an in-depth look into the different actions you can perform during the main phase, starting with attacking and targeting. Attacking is one of the many actions you can perform during the main phase. Each character can only attack once per turn. However, this does not mean that you can't have multiple characters attacking at different times. It's also the most common way to reduce HP of opposing characters, defeat them, and eventually win the game. So how exactly do you attack? Character cards have no attacks that are printed on them. Well, what you have to do is attach attack cards like these to your characters so that they are able to attack with them. Make sure to match all the attachment requirements such as type and brain power. Each attack has a varying amount of strength, so choose wisely. However, characters can only attack other characters that the top of the card points to. This is called targeting. For example, I have blue in play whose top currently faces black, so he can attack him with Brick Blast. However, he can't attack the Mertail in play because blue is not targeting her. You can change targets by rotating the character so that the top faces a different character. If a character is targeting an empty active zone, the attack does no damage. This of course doesn't mean the other effects aren't applied as well. Theoretically, you could target your own characters, but that would be a horrible idea. Anyway, when you attack, tell your opponent which attack you are using as well as who you are using it on. Then, check the damage type the attack uses. There are 3 kinds of damage: defendable, undefendable, and ultima. Defendable damage is the most common kind of damage, and it can be defended. Undefendable, however, cannot be defended. Finally, ultimate damage is a special kind of damage caused by ultimate attacks, and that only ultimate type characters can defend. After checking the damage type, check the playing field for any other cards that might alter the damage of an attack. Be aware that certain attacks can ignore the effects of others, so be watchful. Then, apply all the effects that state they happen before defense on the order of adding, subtracting, and then halving. After they have been applied, your opponents get the chance to defend. When defending, check the amount of incoming damage. Then, roll 1 die for every 60 damage the attack would do, with a maximum of 3 dice. If you don't want to calculate that, use this chart to help you. Once the dice have been rolled, multiply the total roll by 10. This is the amount of damage defended. Subtract that number from the amount of incoming damage. Then apply all other effects that are applied after defending. After that, put 1 damage counter for every 10 damage the attack did. If the current amount of damage on any character is equal or more than its HP, it is defeated. Afterward, apply all other effects such as searching your deck, extra damage, and all other weird stuff that it does. Okay, so as you can see, I have Ultimate Blue in play, very popular character, and I want to use Brick Blast on Verola, Wolf form. Since Brick Blast allows me to attack any active character, I don't have to target Verola in order to use it, so I can just use it directly. However, there are some more effects that need to be addressed. So as you can see, Full Moon Force is in play, which means John has to roll 2 points. He gets heads and a tails, which means the attack damage will be halved. And now it's on to the calculations. Brick Blast's base damage is 200. However, Ultimate Boost full power ability gives it plus 60 damage, which means it's now 260 damage. Sword and Battle Arena both boosted by 20, which means it now does 300 damage, which is a lot until you consider the fact that Dodge is in play, and so John can simply just discard it, which has the damage again. So 300 divided by 2 is 70. Now, some of you may be asking, oh wait, why does Brola have double tungsten armor? You can just use those to, defend more damage. Well, Brick Blast specifies that it ignores items attached to Brola. So the tungsten armor would be kind of just like useless against Brick Blast. Another action you can perform during the main phase is attaching. Attaching cards to your characters allows them to use attacks, abilities, as well as items. The combinations you can make with them are nearly endless. However, there are some requirements characters must have in order to have cards attached to them. First, the character's type must match the type of the card as shown here. Second, the character's brain power must meet or exceed the card's brain power requirement. If a character can no longer use a card due to non-matching types or insufficient brain power, that card is instantly discarded. Finally, the character must meet any other requirement written on the card, such as character requirements and signature moves, or item requirements for using attacks. When a card is attached, it cannot be discarded unless you yourself or an effect of a card causes it to be discarded. When you attach a card, put it under the character so that the card's effect is still showing. It's a good idea to attach different types of cards to different sides like this, so it's easier to identify where everything is. However, you should not attach anything to the top. That is reserved for certain cards, as well as cards that opponents attaches to one of your characters. Finally, each character can have only up to 3 attacks and abilities, as well as 2 items attached at a time. If your opponent's card is attached to one of your characters, that card doesn't count to the attachment limit. Some cards are played directly onto the discard pile or the middle zone instead of onto a character. Finally, arenas are played into the arena zone instead of being attached to a character. Of course, it can still not be discarded unless a card says so or you discard it. Another action you can take during the main phase is shifting or de-shifting. Characters with the shifter type can shift into a different form or even an ultima form. There are a few requirements for shifting, however. First, the character must meet the shifts from requirement on the form or the ultima card. Secondly, the character must have at least 20 HP remaining after shifting. You don't want your character being defeated right after becoming a new form after all. You shift by placing the form or ultima on the shifting character. They cannot be played directly like normal characters. A form or ultima can de-shift the turn after it was played. To de-shift, flip a coin. If heads, put the ultima or form back into your hand. Otherwise, discard it. De-shifting has the same requirements as shifting. However, when an ultima character is de-shifted via the ultima timer, all the normal requirements are ignored. Furthermore, the coin flip is always tails. On the topic of forms, certain characters have an ultima form. The ultima form is the character at his or her most powerful. Because of this, all of them always have at least 300 HP, and they even ignore the type requirement of all attacks, meaning the only limit for them is brain power, which they have a lot of. Thankfully, they are subject to the Ultima rule, which states that you may only have one Ultima character in play. You must discard this card 3 turns after it was played. You can only have up to 3 different Ultima characters in your deck. The phrase discard this card 3 turns after it was played refers to the Ultima timer. During the check phase of your turn, put a turn marker on each of your Ultima characters. If any of them have 4 turn markers at the end of your turn, de-shift that character before you end your turn. The goal of the game is simple: be the last player standing. If all other players have 4 characters in their death zone, you win. As said before, when a character's current damage meets or exceeds its HP, it is defeated. When a character is defeated, put it into one of the death zone's 4 slots. Discard all of its attached cards. Cards attached by the opponents go into their respective owner's discard pile. If your death zone is full at any time, you are out of the game. You can start cleaning up your space if you want to, but leave the cards attached to your opponent's characters in play. However, there are a few other ways to lose the game as well. If you have no cards remaining in your deck during the check phase, flip a coin. If heads, shuffle your discard pile back into your deck. If tails, or if there are no cards in your discard pile, put a turn marker onto your deck zone. If you have 4 markers on your deck zone at the end of your turn, you are out of the game. This timer resets if you replenish your deck, of course. If you have no characters in play at any time after your first 3 turns, you are out of the game. However, there is one rule that basically saves you from this fate if you somehow don't have any characters in play, known as the character out policy rule, or COP rule. On your 4th turn, if you have no characters in play, you must play a character from your hand. If you don't have a playable character in your hand, such as an Ultima or Form, reveal the top card of your deck until you find a playable character. Then play that character onto the wait spot or one of your active zones. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. This rule is instantly deactivated if you play a character within the first 3 turns. When playing with 3 or 4 players, some rules are changed. At the beginning of the game, instead of flipping a coin to see who goes first, each player rolls a die. The highest roll decides who goes first. If there is a tie, the 2 players roll again until a higher number is reached. Layout is also changed. The 3-player layout looks like this, sort of like a triangle. Please note that the thick black lines indicate default targeting. When a character is played into the active zone, or switches into the active zone, it targets the character occupying the indicated active zone. The 4-player layout looks like this. Again, thick black lines indicate default targeting. A playable deck of BRICKFIGHT cards must be between 50 and 75 cards. You must have at least one non-form or Ultima type character in your deck, which is called a base character. You may only have up to 3 copies of a card with the same name. What counts as a card name then? Form is part of a card name. So for example, Blue, Stickform Blue, and Ultima Blue all have different names. Furthermore, with signature moves, only the character with the name specified can use the signature move. If the text has the phrase "and related characters," that means all forms of that character, including Ultima, can use that attack. For example, Blue can use Brick Blast, but if he shifts into any of his 2 forms, he can still use Brick Blast even if he's not in his base form. This is because of Brick Blast card text, which specifies that Blue or related characters can use the attack. The Ultima rule states that you may only have 3 Ultima characters in your deck. However, that doesn't mean you can't have 3 copies of each Ultima. For example, you may have 3 Ultima Blue, 2 Ultima Black, and 3 Ultima Yellow in your deck, but not 3 Ultima Blue, 2 Ultima Black, 3 Ultima Yellow, and 2 Ultima Brick in your deck. You can only have 3 different Ultima characters. The same goes with signature moves. You can have 3 copies of a single signature move, but not multiple different signature moves in your deck. Well, that should be about it. For more info about the anatomy of cards and the different types of the game, check out the full version of the rules linked in the description. If you have any questions, please join the Moving Brick Animations Discord server and ask me in the BRICKFIGHT channel. Finally, please consider buying a BRICKFIGHT product if you want to support the game. It would really mean a lot to me. Be sure to subscribe to this channel where we explore strategies, lore, and the design of BRICKFIGHT, as well as my main channel where I post Black Media, animation, and Catholicism videos. And I'll see you in the next one.